G'day divers and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be talking all about the Divevolk wide angle conversion lens. If you're new to my channel, I'm Sean Elliott and I've been an underwater videographer for over 25 years. This channel is all about using action cameras and mobile phones underwater paired with economical aftermarket accessories. I'll show you how you can use a low-cost camera with low-cost accessories to take some great underwater footage. You don't need to spend a fortune or be lugging around kilos and kilos of equipment to get some great underwater footage. And if you want to know how, then please like and subscribe to my channel. So I've done quite a few dives now, quite a lot of dives actually, using the Divevolk wide-angled lens. I've used it in tropical water, I've used it in cold water, deep, shallow, fresh water, salt water, and I wanted to talk about my findings. I'm going to go through why we use a wide-angled lens on any camera, the pros of this lens, the cons of this lens. We'll go through some settings and techniques, and I'll give you my conclusion. Now let's first talk about why we want a wide-angled lens on a camera. Now assuming the wide-angled lens works well, we're going to end up with a sharper and more colourful image for a couple of reasons. One, because you've already got a wider field of view. So you've got a wider image being put on to the sensor or the image you're looking at. So you've got far more of the image in the same space. And that by definition will make it sharper. It will also be brighter and more colourful generally because you're getting more light. You're now taking more light and putting it onto the sensor. On top of that, because we've got a wider field of view, we can now get closer to our subject. So if we get closer to a subject, then there's less water between the subject and the camera, therefore light's traveling through less water, and we end up with a sharper image again, and we also end up with more color because we don't just lose color because of depth, we lose it in all directions. Light just does not like to travel through water. So the closer we can get to our subject, the sharper and more colorful the image, the wider the shot, the sharper and the more light we're going to get. So that is why we want to put a wide-angled lens on our camera and at least get back the field of view we lost when we went underwater. So let's talk about the positives first. The first big positive has to be price. It's $109 US currently, and if you use my link in the description, you can get 6% off. So it's a $100 lens. You're not going to get anything for $100. I think I've paid more just for a lens hood than that. You can easily spend over $1,000 US for a 67mm wide-angled wet lens. And you're definitely going to be at least sort of hitting that $300 mark to jump up after this. I mean, even if you went to say something like the AOI UWL 03 lens or the backscatter sharp lens, you can change the backs of these into 55mm threads and then use a step-up ring to attach it. I don't know, if you've got one, give it a try. I don't really like it. It's not a big enough lens, so you can't use this on your ultra-wide lens, for example. It works quite well on your normal main lens, but I don't see the point because it only makes it about the same field of view as your ultra-wide lens is without one. So you really want a large enough lens to cover your ultra-wide lens, and this conversion lens will do it, and it's already 2 to 3 times cheaper than this cheap lens. I am trying out some other lenses, but they are going to be quite a bit more expensive. I certainly have not found anything in this price range that really even exists, let alone works anything like this lens. So price, big tick. The next positive is size and weight, and really the build for the price. Now it's plastic, don't get me wrong, it's not a glass lens, it's not going to be anything amazing, but it is extremely small for something that's 67mm, and you can covers your entire ultra-wide lens of your phone, and it's extremely light. So you're not trying to carry around a massive, bulky glass wide wet lens. And to be honest, we're trying to keep our unit down small and light as possible. I mean, the main reason I wanted to start using action cameras and mobile phones as my daily camera for my own personal use or going on traveling on trips instead of dragging around professional gear was so I didn't have to drag around kilos and kilos of equipment and stress about very expensive equipment. So, I mean, that fits the bill. It is very light, it's very cheap, and it's still well built. Like, it has a rotation so you can change it So you can move the hood very easily. It doesn't really matter. It makes life very easy because obviously you need to line it up and you're not trying to work out where the hood's going to be. You do definitely need, with this system, some sort of adjustable hood. Otherwise, you're going to have to try and work out where it's going to be when you put it on. So that's another nice thing about this lens. But you can definitely add any threaded lens to this system. It's just a 67mm thread. So any 67mm wide-angled lens will fit on there. Or if it's a different thread, you can always get step up and step down rings. So the cons, there are a few. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a $109 lens. So you can't expect to pay $109 for a wide-angle conversion lens and then expect it to work exactly the same as, say, an AOI UWL-09 Pro, which costs, what, $1,200 and is made out of glass and is a very nice lens. This is still just a wide-angle conversion lens. It's made out of plastic and it's cheap. So that is going to cause some issues, such as, although you are going to get a very nice wide lens shot, especially because it'll go over your ultra wide lens, it is going to be soft and distorted on the edges. There's no way around that. You need a quality lens to get sharpness in that sort of width all the way across. So it will be nice and sharp, I find, and colorful in the center, but just on the edges, you're going to get that soft, slightly out of focus look. And there's nothing you can do about that without spending a lot more money. The next thing is, because it's the polycarbonate, it's got a small hood on it, it's domed, you're going to have issues when you're up shallow mainly, or you're trying to shoot into the sun. You're going to end up with issues with lights and reflecting off the back of the housing. There's no way around that. It's a small conversion lens. Just think about, you're going to see it on the screen, but if you're going to start shooting up shallow and you shoot anywhere into the sun, you're going to end up with some weird effects coming through. So, and lens flare and all those sorts of things. Also, you can have a problem with seeing the camera itself, so the housing, reflecting off the back of that dome lens. Again, just adjust your lighting, adjust your angle, and hopefully that'll go away, but that is always going to be a problem with a wide-angle conversion lens made out of polycarbonate. So the other con is, once you put a wet lens on, you really need to use manual focus. You can sort of get away with a mobile phone using autofocus without wet lenses. I still wouldn't recommend it, but you're not going to be able to do that once you start putting wet lenses on. Certainly not a wide-angle conversion lens, just by the way that it works. The phones really don't like focusing. They'll focus for a bit and then they'll start to hunt. You're really going to need to learn how to focus. Which then leads me into recommendations of settings and techniques. So I would be recommending that you use an aftermarket app, one that has touch to focus that works really well. I mean, the Google Pixel camera actually works quite well with touch to focus, and the photography section's quite good. It has focus peaking, although it keeps switching off for some reason and you've got to go switch it back on. But in video, it doesn't have it. If you're using an iPhone, there's quite a few options. Blackmagic works really well on an iPhone. I wouldn't recommend Blackmagic for wide-angle videography on Android still at the moment. It has a lot of noise issues. I quite like it for macro, but not wide, for those noise problems. Which is a shame because it has by far the best focusing system and user interface. But another one for Android to have a look at is MC24fps Pro. It's a paid app, so you're going to have to buy it. And the nice thing about that, it has focus peaking, it has a lot of settings. You can get a much better image by upping the megabits per second and lots of other features in there. You don't have to use all of it. But more importantly, it has a very good touch to focus system. You can go from auto to touch to focus to manual. And the reason we want to be using touch to focus and manual is it just won't focus. You'll have a lot of focus shifting and a lot of blurry shots if you don't start manually focusing. So the other one is what lens to use it on. I would recommend you use it on your ultra wide lens because you're trying to get the widest shot that you can. It's not the same as the GoPro. You already have 11 centimeter focus distance on the Google Pixel and fairly similar on the other phones for your main lens. So you don't need to be putting a lens in front of your main lens to get it to focus closer, unlike an action camera. So there really isn't a lot of advantage most of the time. There's never a never. There are times where I will, but if you're going to put a wet lens on your main lens, all it's going to do is make it as wide as your ultra wide lens is. And I don't really see the point in that. The beautiful thing, or one of the beautiful things about using a phone, is because you have 3 separate lenses. So why wouldn't you just use your ultra wide lens if that's the width that you're looking for, and not have to deal with all the added complexness of using a wet lens? So put it on your ultra wide lens, and normal thing, I'd always suggest you film in 4K 60, but you're gonna have to get used to using touch to focus or manual focus. Touch to focus works so well on the Divevolk system with a mobile phone. The fact that you can just point on your screen and focus where you want it to focus, then take advantage of that. You really should be using manual or touch to focus all the time, but it's definitely needed when you're using a wet lens, and definitely when you're using this wide angle conversion lens, because if you don't, it's just not going to focus. It's going to shift all over the place and get confused because you're using a conversion lens and it doesn't know where to focus, along with the fact that it doesn't know that when you're looking at that turtle that it doesn't want you to focus on the fish that just swam past. It doesn't want you to focus on the bits of things floating in the water. They're not that smart. So if you've been using an action camera and you're used to not having to worry about focus, that's just because it has unlimited focus. You need to start using touch to focus and manual focus and deciding what you want it to focus on. The good thing about that is you can use it to get some really creative shots, and it looks much better than just having everything in focus like on an action camera. I do a lot of testing in the background, and I'm trying to find a lens that works well in this sort of realm. There's no point in me showing you a really, really expensive lens or a really, really heavy lens, because it defeats the purpose of using your phone. If your lens is starting to cost as much as what a camera costs, then get a better camera, is what I would suggest. And if it's getting so big and heavy that it's not suiting the purpose of taking a small mobile phone or action camera, it also defeating the purpose. So I am trying to find some lenses that work well, that aren't crazily large and also not crazily expensive, to suit this channel and to give you an idea of something that could definitely be worth jumping up to. But at the moment, especially for the price, $109, I think it's worth learning with this. You got to learn whether you like using a wet lens to start with, because it does come with more work than just using the lenses on your phone. So it's a great place to start when you begin, and for $109, you don't have much to lose. So I hope that helped. I really quite like this lens for the price and the size. I mean, the value of, say, a lens this cheap is, it doesn't matter if you drop it underwater. It doesn't matter if you put a big scratch in. It doesn't matter if you forget it. It is nice. It does a good job for the price that it is. It's a good place to start. If you haven't used a wide-angled lens on your phone before, then this is a good place to not spend a lot of money, but get used to having to use tap to focus and manual focus and adjust to get the lens in the right spot, and learn whether or not that extra width is something, the extra difficulties with doing it are something that you're after. I would suggest that you should be shooting with a wide-angled lens. You will get a better result in the end, but you need to learn whether or not that is something that you're willing to put the time into to learn. And if it's not, it's $109 and not a $500 or $1,000 lens that you're wasting money on. So until the next time, keep blowing bubbles, and never forget, the deeper you go, the further you get away from all those idiots.